Good news you can use whatever phone, yeah. She got the good news you can use. Good news you can use for your life. So listen up, everybody. Listen up, everybody. She got the good news you can use. Good news you can use for your life. If you wanna get the info that'll help you throughout your life, yeah.
Hello, and welcome again to a special edition, a limited edition of the Boomer Beat series, where we are talking about the would have, should have, could haves of our lives and reflecting on if we had just made one different decision, how dramatically different our lives might have been. And today, joining me is someone I knew from Ohio University. It's like 40 years ago. Is it 40 years?
I'm not saying.
Well, I look good, so I'll say 40. Anyway, it's my friend from Ohio University. We were on the speech team together. He was my dramatic duo partner, a very successful team, as a matter of fact. And he is here to offer his own reflection. So, Jeff Green, Professor Green, now tell us about your journey to where you are now. Where were you raised, and how did you finally get to? You're in Georgia now, correct?
That's correct. Yeah, I've been here about 20 years.
How did you get there?
So many roads we travel. Okay, I'll try to do it shortly. I was born in Columbus, Ohio. My family, when I was about 6 years old, moved back to an old family farm and business to help my great grandmother take care of this property after the death of my grandfather and great grandfather in relatively close proximity to each other. She was left alone and needed some help, so they did that. And that's how I ended up. This was in Albany, Ohio, just outside of Athens, which is where we met at Ohio University when we were undergraduates there. Immediately upon completing my undergraduate, I fell into an opportunity to do the MFA program in acting at Ohio University too. It was really serendipitous and nothing that was by any plan in any way, shape, or form. It was just sort of, oh, well, that sounds cool. Let's try that. And after that, I worked in Cleveland, the Cleveland Playhouse. I worked at the Milwaukee Rep and did shows there. Went to New York for a few years, then took a teaching job at the University of Nebraska at Kearney, which was my first university position, and did that for about 10 years. Worked there with a new play development program called the Great Platte River Playwrights Festival. We moved to Georgia after our kids were born. It was in part career related, but also because where we are here was about equidistance from where my family was in Ohio, where my wife's family was in Florida. And so it was easier to travel. And once we had kids and stuff, to be able to visit with their grandparents and all that. And I've been here for 20 years. I've worked for a number of years with a historic theater in town, the Rylander Theater, in concert with developing the academic program in theater. And I'm very shortly planning on retiring as soon as my daughter gets insurance, and then what I want to do is go back to work as a freelance actor. There's so much film and television and stuff going on in Georgia right now, and there's a very active theater scene in the state as well. So hopefully I can have more time to do more of that kind of work in the near future. So,
and who knows, if Tyler Perry happens to watch my podcast, you never know. You could certainly.
Well, he took one of my students here under his wing and has been really working to help her develop her early part of her career. So he's been very generous to her.
Awesome. So was Ohio University your first choice? Or only choice? I don't know.
I had to go to school where I could go to school, and I lived at home until I got a van. So
I
yeah,
remember
I mean,
that van.
it was just it was really literally the only place I even considered. It was, and fortunate, it was there, and that we lived in proximity to that institution. So
You grew up in a small town because I had never heard of Albany until I heard of
it's a
you.
village, like 600 people with
Right.
three nursing homes.
How different do you think your life would have been had you grown up in an urban metropolitan city?
My family decided, for example, not to move from Columbus, uh, and I'd have stayed in Columbus, for example, and grown up there. Um, I don't know. My life, my childhood and stuff was like the Waltons. And so, once we moved back to the farm and stuff, I don't know. I had had we not been near Athens, which, though it's a small town, has a very cosmopolitan kind of quality because of the influx of people from all over the world there. And had that not been close by and been a sort of a resource that influenced my sense of the world, um, it might have been more austere, but that was there, and that was a very enriching part of the community and the environment, and always was an influence.
I know you've always been into acting. That was very obvious when we were in school together. How did you ever think that you wanted to be a serious actor? I mean, just not do anything else, not teaching, nothing else, be a serious actor. And how different well, we know how different your life would be if were the next Brad Pitt, I guess.
From your mouth to God's ears.
But did you ever have you ever reflected on, going down that path, just solely going down that path and trying to make it?
Well, I did for about 10 years. I worked as a journeyman actor for 10 years. Um, um, but even when I was in undergraduate school, my focus was in education. I got certified to teach English, journalism, speech, and theater in high school. And I had always kind of envisioned myself at that time being a high school teacher. And I did at various times teach high school. And also when I was in New York, I would substitute. I got to substitute at the Performing Arts High School from time to time, the fame, that. And so uh, it it wasn't really the notion of pursuing theater as an exclusive career, acting as an exclusive career, until I literally I fell into the graduate program. I had, there was the summer stock theater, Ohio Valley Summer Theater. And the summer after I graduated, I auditioned and was cast in 2 shows. And a lot of the theater students would do that as their summer job, including many of the graduate students. And Bob Winters, who was the head of the school, the director of the School of Theater at the time, directed the first show I was in. And he was like, well, Jeff, have you ever thought about maybe getting into a graduate acting program? And I think what happened was somebody was supposed to come back and didn't come back. And then they had this one position that was open. And I had never really thought about doing that at all. But, just in a couple of minutes of interest on his part, he really changed my life completely, the entire trajectory of it from what I would have anticipated it being. And so the thing I learned, particularly the years that I was in New York, is that there's a change where once you're pursuing this professionally, it's a sales job and you're the product, and you got to do a lot of marketing, and you spend as much time or more doing auditions and making rounds of agents and casting directors and all of that stuff. It's the Pareto principle. 80% of your time is spent doing that, and 20% is actually doing the work that you like. And I discovered after a while that wasn't really what I wanted to do. And I'd always liked teaching, and I'd always liked the academic life. So I made that jump. And I've come to view what we do in academic theater based on my professional experience as well. You almost, to get the kind of jobs that I had in academia, you had to do that, walk that talk. And so many of my former acting cast members that I associated with in shows, like at the Cleveland Playhouse in particular, there was one show that, and the four of us that were in that all went off and did other professional work for a while, but we all ended up in academic theater, and there's a host of reasons why. The stability, the income, and the benefits are certainly competitive, if not better, benefits in particular. And you have a lot more access and influence and control over your work. Though that said, in the context of this discussion we're having, there are two particular incidents that I don't like to dwell too much on. Shoulda, woulda, coulda. I'm not sure how productive that is. You know, it's the old Frank Sinatra song, "Regrets, I've had a few." You would have mentioned. But
all have. Come on now, we all have.
most of those have nothing to do with my profession. uh, but there were two particular experiences. When the year after I started in the graduate program, it used to be that they had what are called the URTA auditions, the University Resident Theater auditions. And back in those days, you would go to those not just to get audition for graduate programs, but also to audition for summer jobs, like the Shakespeare festivals, for example, was what I was particularly interested in. But by happenstance, I ended up in a flight that was not only for the summer theater jobs, but also the graduate programs. I got placed oddly. And I ended up with 17 callbacks from different graduate programs around the country. And I knew nothing about any of that. I mean, I had absolutely no insights. It was all something I fell into. And I look at my students today and how much they have to, you know, struggle and work to get into decent graduate programs. And I just fell into it. It was an accident. And so in hindsight, had I known more, there were a couple of those graduate programs. The training that I got was really good, but some of these programs have better professional networks based on the contacts of alumni, and they really work to cultivate them. And they have better ties with other studios in New York. So one of those programs was at Rutgers that I got a call back from. And I learned after the fact that the guy there, William Esper, was the teacher. There's certain teachers you can study with that agents and casting directors will be interested just because you come out of those programs. So had I, the Oslo Theater in the conservatory program at Florida State was another one of those. And at the time, I knew nothing about any of that. So as generous as Bob Winters had been, in hindsight, had I known more, I might have considered going to one of those other programs and transferring. But I didn't know enough at the time to even know to think about it. And I was happy where I was. I liked where I was, and I liked the people I was working with.
So, but do you think that ultimately it would have still brought you back to academia?
I don't have a clue.
Oh.
I that's hard to say.
Yeah, hard to say.
I have one friend who we were actors together in Cleveland, and he ended up getting into that program at Rutgers, and he became a pretty successful working actor in television and film. So I don't know.
Well,
for me,
I can tell you, based on the limited acting you did with me, I thought you were absolutely fabulous. So that's
well,
my 2 cents. Okay. All right. And that was a hard, that was a hard piece to do. So the fact that you were able to do it and you did it well. All right. So, we have this whole thing. Sometimes we talk about the one that got away. And I know you're happily married with some wonderful children.
Yeah. You know those
Was there
regrets? I
anybody?
had a few I was talking about earlier.
Was there anyone else? Was there anybody else that you kind of had your eye on that you thought that you might marry that you didn't marry?
Yeah, absolutely. And I probably, before I met my wife, who I met again accidentally, I just broke up with a girlfriend that I'd been with for a while, and we might have gotten married, um, and I was going to be a free man in New York. And that night I was New Year's Eve, and I met this young woman at the Bond Street Theater Coalition New Year's Eve party, and now we've been married almost 30 years. Yeah, but it's interesting you asked that, because I heard this little corollary one time that after the fact it made sense. It's like there are two factors, and I'm not sure I agree with the gender assignment of these, because I think it can work either way. But the statement is, for her, it's a question of, is this the right person? And for him, it's a question of, is this the right time? And if both of those things meet, if it is the right person and it is the right time, and I think there are any number of right people you could be with. I'm not real set on, but if those two things come together, if it's the right person and it's the right time, then you're much more likely to have that relationship reach its full fruition over time and settle in together, whether you're married or not. You can be longtime companions or whatever.
Sure. You
But
can't.
so yeah, there were other people that I was involved in relationships, but I'm not sure I was the right person for them, and it wasn't the right time for me. That's for sure. So,
Okay. Other than go ahead.
I should say I'm still in touch with those people, and we're still on friendly terms. So
Are you?
there's only a couple of people that I think there were really hard feelings after the breakups, but for the most part, people that I've was involved with romantically at one time or another, we're still in touch. And again, it's if it wasn't for Facebook, I don't know if
Well, that can
that
be
was
a
the case.
slippery slope depending on how your wife is. But is there
She's
anything?
cool. She's very comfortable. She's very secure.
Well, okay, and you know what? You make her feel secure. That's the key. See, the man has to make the wife feel secure for her to be that secure. So, is there anything else that you can look back on in your life and say, you know what, I kind of wish I had done that, other than what you shared? Is there anything else?
Yeah, there were actually,
Any place you
again,
wanted to travel, do anything?
there was another career choice I made when I was at the Playhouse. I got my equity card. I was eager to move to New York as fast as I could get there and stuff. And but the artistic director at that time offered me a chance to do a sort of like a postgraduate fellowship in literary management, where theaters like the Cleveland Playhouse, they get new plays all the time and new scripts, and there's a person that sort of sorts them out, decides whether or not that might be of a good fit for the company. They do lead stage readings of them and work with the playwrights sort of as a liaison between playwrights of new plays and the theater company. And I had a chance to do that for a year as a postgraduate fellowship at the Cleveland Playhouse. And because I'd gotten my union card and I was eager to get off and go work and do what I could do, in hindsight, I think it would have been a good thing to have stayed and done that, and might have opened up some other opportunities and avenues that otherwise didn't present themselves. And it's kind of a pathway to becoming an artistic director of a theater like that. And I've done some artistic direction, but nothing on the scale of a Lort Theater, for example. So, and who knows what would have happened, but that's one choice career-wise that I made that I thought I probably should have stayed and done that for at least a year. So.
All right. Well, as we get ready to wrap this up, I'd like to ask you one final question. What words of wisdom would you give to your younger self? That was not a rhetorical question.
No, I'm trying to don't let your karma run over your dogma so much.
Okay.
I liked to party when I was younger, and I had a good time. I don't regret it, but there are times that I might have been better off being a little more focused and driven. There was a time in my life where I really just wanted to live thoroughly in the moment, kind of on the edge of unfolding experience. And it's a luxury to be able to do that. And I had a window of time, but I don't regret that. I think that was a wonderful kind of experience to have, where you weren't making plans, you were keeping yourself just open to whatever, and following some strict kind of course of development, both professionally and eventually I obviously had to give that up. But maybe that would be the thing I would say is, that's what I say, your karma, don't let your karma run over your dogma so much. Much, I should say.
Okay, I like that. All right, very good. All right, well, Jeff, thank you so very much for taking the time.
I think it was JB that used to use that expression, and she's probably the one that told me I needed to do it.
She probably did. Now that's true. And while we're talking about JB briefly, I used to keep up with you through her, because I always wondered what happened to you after you left OU. And I spoke with her often back then. And, I'd always ask about you. And she would always say, well, he's in New York, or he's doing this, or he's doing that. So she was like the glue that kind of kept us together, even though we were all these miles apart.
She was the mother of that family for sure.
Yes, she was. Yes, she was. All right. Well, listen, thank you again, Jeff. That's going to do it for this edition of the Boomer Beat. I want to thank those of you who have tuned in. Please leave your comments in the chat box. And remember this, you have gifts to give the world. So find your unique voice and prosper. See ya.
See you. Thank you, Beth.
You're very welcome. My pleasure, always.
Good news you can use for your life. If you want to get the info that'll help you throughout your life. Yeah.